Caribbean and Iberian Studies program, and really pleased you could all come today. You may have noticed we had a little switch in our schedule at the last minute, and I'm so happy that Herman was able to switch out from November to today and help us kind of reformulate our lunchtime lecture series. So just wanted to mention, you probably noticed when you came in, but there's coffee and hot water for tea and some snacks in the back, which you're welcome to. We also have a handout of our most up-to-date lecture series schedule for the semester that's kind of in that clipboard there. And also a sign-in sheet if you are not on our listserv and you want to be added to get information about the various events that we are sponsoring. So thanks a lot for coming, and I'll turn it over to Alberto Vargas to introduce our speaker.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody. I'm Alberto Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of the program, Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Germán Palacio Castañeda. Germán has deep connections with Madison because he obtained a Master in Science in Legal Institutions here from the law school in 1985. And he also was a Tinker visiting professor in 2010. Germán also has a PhD in history from Florida International University. He's a professor in the Universidad Nacional de Colombia in the Amazon campus in Leticia, where he has been the director 2001, 2005, and now he's the director of the graduate program. And he was responsible for creating a new program, a doctorate in Amazonian studies. He's a prolific writer. He has many publications, a couple of edited books, one of them, The Political Ecology in the Amazon, and dozens of papers and publications, peer review articles. So it's my great pleasure to receive Germán, who's going to talk to us about how Amazonian, Pan-Amazonian is changing with the world. Welcome, Germán.
Okay. Thank you, Alberto. Thank you, Sarita. Thank you, all the colleagues of the LASIS program and Francisco, of course. Originally, I thought this lecture as part of my presentation in UNILA. UNILA is Universidad Federal Latinoamericana. Something that I don't remember exactly, that is in Foz de Iguazú, but it's interesting. Universidad Federal de Latinoamérica. It's very interesting because there was organized by Lula this time, and half of the professors come from different parts of Brazil, outside of Brazil, and half of the students too. So I put together some ideas, and it was related to the relationship between Amazonia and globalization. So I took this opportunity to improve a little bit, and I hope that all the problems that the presentation have, you will help me improving with ideas or saying nonsense or whatever you think is important. So let's start. Nowadays, or since the last decades, the global audience used to simplify Amazonia. But Amazonia has been simplified in very different ways. It's a very interesting topic for research for people in literature or the people who study metaphors. But let's say Amazon, since the beginning, these women warriors, El Dorado, Lost Paradise, Green Hell, or Red Desert. All of these are metaphors about the Amazon. But in the last 2 decades or 3 decades, I would say that there is a global imaginary about the Amazonia with those 2 particular, let's say, driving forces that put that kind of metaphor in the mind of everybody in the world. One is the global environmental agenda and the Rio Summit in 1992, and second, the commemoration of the invasion of contact, or whatever is the name, between Europe and the New World in 1992. I would say that since then, environmentalists, indigenous activists, And scholars have realized that it's much more important to understand the Amazonia as a whole, rather than the fragmented Amazonia, fragmented because of nation states. We have in reality a very big, a huge socio-biome. However, the imaginaries are like this. Maybe Avatar is one of the best and interesting and fascinating way to put it. A big, 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 big humid forest and populated with indigenous people. Some indigenous people. I would say that the idea of an hydrological basin, the whole river, was amplified with an ecosystemic vision that make Amazonia a pan-Amazonia, a big entity. From there emerged a vision that reinforced ordinary people that are part of this big biome. My point right now is that 2 decades after this important imaginary that is kind of global, there have been happening new things that should be taken in consideration and maybe change a little bit that global imaginary that is in the global public. However, before I keep going, I have to say that fragmented Amazonia has a lot of inertia because, of course, the existence of nation states, territorial nation states. This nation state, despite globalization, not always has been weakened, but some of them have been strengthened, in fact. This is the way, more or less, we can change that. We understand now Amazonia. It's like the big forest, that part that is the Andean Amazonian region, and this southern part that is kind of a little savanna sort of landscape. But it's anyway big. Some people will move this line through to this point and this point, so even Amazonia could be bigger. For example, the Venezuelan Amazonia in reality is that kind of Orinoco landscape that has continuity with the Amazonian forest, but from the hydrological point of view is more like Orinoco. From the smallest Amazon, we are moving to the understanding of a pan-Amazon region. And I put this, the Amazon River does not start in Manaus, it's because it's kind of common, or it was, for Brazilians to think that, Amazonas is that river that is the confluence of Solimoes, they call, what we call in Peru and in Colombia Amazonas, and they call Solimoes, and the black, let me see where it is, maybe it's this, no, I don't see here. Maybe it's this, yes, this is the Rio Negro, which is called in Colombia Rio Negro and Baubés. In the 19th century, it was very important to think on the Amazon region, on the Amazon River, as part of just one country. It was part of the global dispute between countries like England, the United States, saying if the river is part just of one country, it's an internal river. But if it goes through several countries, that is an international river, and then there should be free trade. So, right now we have a more global, amplified comprehension of what is Amazonia, not so fragmented. Let's take a look to some data. 7 million square kilometers is almost the United States taking away Alaska, or it's like Australia. It's kind of huge. It's shared by 8 countries, and I didn't call the French Guiana country because it's a colony of France, because France is still a colonial power. Protected areas, 23%, indigenous territory, 26%, and if you add two of these, it doesn't give you the exact number, just because many of the protected areas, with some sort of environmental principle working on it, it intersects with resguardos or reservas, with reservations of indigenous people. More or less 33 million people live in the Amazon, more than 370 native, different native peoples, 1.7 million indigenous people, so you see it's not a big quantity. 129 indigenous communities in voluntary isolation. That is a concept that has been working in the United Nations for a specific group of indigenous people, and more than 30 million non-indigenous people. Let's say Urbana, Peasant, Caboclo, River people, coca growers, and also a lot of bureaucracy in these small towns that live there, more or less, to have an idea. I think there are three main drivers that are changing a lot the Amazon, or in a way they are disputing the meaning and also the size of the Amazon. Two of them are completely global, and one is more related to the nation state. Two global projects are fighting to put their imprint in the Amazon. One is what I will call conservationism, but I am calling neo-conservationism. Later I will tell you why. Neo-developmentalism and the territorial nation state. If you think of the history of the United States at the end of the 19th century, you have that history of frontier. So what you have at the end of the 20th century in the Amazonia is a history of frontiers. Not necessarily, or not only the international borders, but the idea of frontiers. So the idea of one social entity, let's call nation, growing and catching the territory. Pan-Amazonia is experiencing the effects of these driving forces. Due to the environmental turn, the way we understand Amazonia in relationship to globalization is, I think there is sort of a turn or simultaneity. We cannot just speak today of globalization in the Amazon, like international forces going to the Amazon region. No. Amazonia has become a global object. People in Tokyo or in Montreal or in South Africa have walked claiming, let's protect the Amazonia. Amazonia has become a global object. It's not just a region. Let's say, it's not the Cerrado brasileño, it's not the Cerrado. Nobody, you don't see in the social media, nobody protesting for the destruction of the Cerrado. Nobody is protesting for the destruction of the Orinoco. But everybody is protesting for the destruction of the Amazonia. Amazonia has become a global object. So I will say there is a sort of combination from globalization in the Amazon and globalization of the Amazon. So Amazon becoming a global object in this period. I will say that Amazonia experiences new global transformation in the 21st century that is becoming or is changing the world because the center is moving from the west to the Pacific Basin. Decades of continuous growth of China, Korea, Japan, the Tigers, Australia, California, and so on and so forth, and other countries in the Pacific Basin. I was thinking, with pedagogical reason, I would like to exaggerate a little bit. The globalization of the 21st century will move completely from the Eurocentric point of view of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century.
So Just wanted to mention, you probably noticed when you came in, but there's coffee and hot water for tea and some snacks in the back, which you're welcome to. We also have a handout of our most up-to-date lecture series schedule for the semester that's kind of in that clipboard there. And also a sign-in sheet if you are not on our listserv and you want to be added to get information about the various events that
from Florida International University. He's a professor in the Universidad Nacional de Colombia in the Amazon campus in Leticia, where he has been the director 2001, 2005, and now he's the director of the graduate program, and he was responsible for creating a new...
We're sponsoring. So thanks a lot for coming, and I'll turn it over to Alberto Vargas to introduce our speaker.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome everybody. I'm Alberto Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of the program, Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies program. And it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Germán Palacio Castañeda.
Caribbean and Iberian Studies program. And really pleased you could all come today. You may have noticed we had a little switch in our schedule at the last minute, and I'm so happy that Germán was able to switch out from November to today and help us kind of reformulate our lunchtime lecture series.
Germán has deep connections with Madison because he obtained a Master in Science in Legal Institutions here from the law school in 1985. And he also was a Tinker visiting professor in 2010. Germán also has a PhD in history